Hey guys, your host Avery Carl with the Short Term Shop here. Welcome to our 10-episode deep dive on the Sarasota and Bradenton area, which includes all those fun barrier islands like Anna Maria Island, Siesta Key, really the west coast of Florida. And if you guys are ready to start buying in this market, email us at agents@theshorttermshop.com and we will connect you with our expert agents in this market. I also wanted to let you know that we have some supplemental materials for you guys available on our website. It's theshorttermshop.com, where you can go and you can set up a search and look at properties, see what the purchase prices are in this market currently. And you can save your search so that when a property that hits the market in your price range comes out, we can email you and then you'll know right away. We've also got the AirDNA data, thanks to our friends over at AirDNA, for this market for the past few years to help you gauge what a property should be able to do. We've got a pretty cool calculator on the website also to help you tie everything together. So lots of stuff to help you along your way while you're listening to this podcast, or if you just want to hang out with us more, that's pretty cool because we want to hang out with you too. And there's one good place you can do that. It is our Facebook group, same title as my book. It's called Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth. It's just us and 60,000 of our closest friends hanging out, talking about short-term rentals, sharing best practices, and all that stuff. So you can join that, or if you guys really just want to talk to us directly, if you have questions about short-term rentals, we have an open office hours call every Thursday, and you can sign up for that at strquestions.com. Now let's get to the episode. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Short Term Show special episode series on the Sarasota and Bradenton markets. I've got John and Christina here again. You guys are super familiar by now. I think we're on episode 8, maybe. And today we're going to talk about common occurrences for this market from a management standpoint. So let's say you've already bought your property, you've closed. We'll talk about some common things that you run into when you're managing properties in this market. How's it going, guys, by the way?
Fantastic.
Awesome. So do you guys want to start, or I'll start? So the first thing that I think about when having beach properties in terms of maintenance and just general cleanliness is dealing with wet bathing suits, wet clothes, wet towels thrown all over the place, and sand. So are there any particular finishes or types of furniture that you guys stick to, or cleaning checklists to help mitigate the problems that can come along with that?
The majority of our it depends on where the property is located, I'd say, as to how big of a problem that is. But the majority of the properties that we personally own are, a little bit away from the beach. So basically a car ride away. So people won't be walking straight from the beach into the property. They'll have to get in a car. So they'll wrap a towel around themselves. They'll wipe their feet off, something like that. But one thing we do is we put a hose out in front of the property. So when they pull in from their car, before they bring their beach supplies, beach coolers, things like that, even their feet, that they can kind of hose off and mitigate that sand coming into the property. Wet bathing suits, towels, and stuff like that. Most of the time we see people hang those on the around the pool area, on the pool patio, the pool fence, something like that. So we don't necessarily have a big problem with that in the house. One thing that we have learned is that your washer and dryer is very important. And we've learned over the years that certain brands aren't as good for beach conditions as others. And what I mean by that is, I bought a very high-end GE washer and dryer back in the day, and we were having this problem with all of these gray, black streaks in the laundry. And the GE repairman comes out and he tells me that GE appliances have plastic glides that the drum spins on. And when you get sand in there, those plastic glides get all eaten up, because it's basically like sandpaper eating away at them. And they start leaving streaks on the white linens. So the GE guy recommended always getting a Samsung or an LG one, which use stainless steel rollers instead of the plastic glides. And, he says he sees that more and more as the closer you get to the beach. So, that's one thing I would definitely recommend is, a hose out front, and making sure you get appliances that are friendly for the sand.
I hadn't thought about that. That makes sense. Good to know. That's a great tip to start off.
I was going to say also another thing is just making sure to leave lots of cleaning supply, make sure you have a mop in the house and you have a broom and a dustpan, because not only is it going to bother your cleaners, it's going to bother the vacationers that are in there too. They're going to be like, how can I get rid of the sand? My feet are all sandy. And so I think having those tools in the house for them to use is good too.
Yeah. Do you guys put any kind of sign by the hose that says like, hey, rinse your feet off here? Because I know for us, we've got to drive to the beach. And then when I get the kids in the car, get them back to the house. And I think I've sprayed all the sand off their feet. Like all the white sand is gone. You can't really see any, but there's that kind of darker sand that like sticks to things a little more. You don't really see it until you've put your children in a white bathtub. And then it's like, and it doesn't just rinse out. It like makes these black smudges on the bathtub, and you have to actually get like a Lysol wipe or something. Do you guys have that there? Is that a thing?
Not necessarily. We just get the white beach sand all over the place sometimes. Some guests are better at keeping it out of the house, and others, some guests basically turn the house into a beach. So, like Christina said, giving them a way to clean up after themselves is, a very good idea.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So, back to the sign thing. Do you put a sign by the?
We don't, but that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So that's something definitely we should probably do.
Do you guys have a sign where you make people shower before they get in the pool? I don't do that, but I've seen people try to do that to try to keep sand out of the pool. And I just think it's a little over the top.
We have outdoor showers, and we have a sign that says shower. We don't, mandate that people shower before they get in the pool. The sand is one reason why, we would love for people to shower before they get in the pool, but the sunscreen is an even bigger reason. The sunscreen clogs the filter. If the filter is not flowing properly, then the heater's not working. Then you get calls that says the pool is cold. It's kind of like a spiral of events.
Yeah. Yep. That's not what you want. The worst thing you could possibly have is that shoulder season where the pool's a little too cold and it's supposed to be heated and it's not, because it takes, all day or the next day to get there. So if something's not working right with that, that's not a good thing for their stay. In terms of like wet bathing suits and towels. So I have learned the hard way, and maybe there's other things that we could do to better optimize this. People sitting on upholstered furniture in wet bathing suits, throwing wet towels on to like rugs, and then it kind of gets that mildewy smell. Do you guys ever have people do that? Or is there any way to mitigate that you guys, because you can't just go get like a wood bench instead of a couch,
Sure. I really don't see that much. Christina, do you have any thoughts?
No, I will say the one thing is we're really diligent about having our couches cleaned. Like we have a steaming company, I think it's a steam company, John, that comes and cleans that. So we do keep up that way with it, but we haven't had a lot of like staining or mildew smell or anything like that I can think of.
Well, that's good. That's good. I found, this is just, hopefully people have the sense not to sit on our couches and chairs with a wet bathing suit. But if they do, this is just a market where we're going to have to replace our couch more than other markets. So, all right. So that's just anything else around general, like maintenance because of beach stuff, before we move on to other things?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. Because I think the next few might take the rest of the time up. So let's talk about beach conditions. So red tide happens sometimes, like it happened really bad. Was that last year where red tide was real bad? And then it doesn't happen every year. I don't think it happened this year. But what do we do about that?
This year was a little bit different because we got red tide in the winter from the hurricane. Normally it's, primarily in the summertime. Red tide is a challenge. It's guests question it frequently. The best place that we found to go to get information about red tide is the Mote Marine Laboratory website. I think the site's called visitbeaches.org. And they have specific red tide reports for each location. So each individual beach will have a red tide report. It'll tell you how the odor is, if there's dead fish on the beach, things like that, if there's respiratory irritations. So by having that information, you can kind of steer guests to one beach versus the other, or providing guests with that information, they can kind of, go to one beach versus the other, because, a beach that's a mile apart, one might have significant red tide and the other might not. Also, having the pool and having a property that's a little bit off the beach, kind of like our properties, it gives the guests the opportunity to still be able to enjoy the outdoors of Florida. Maybe they go to the beach for a little bit, and the red tide is, it bothers them, but they can still enjoy it for a couple hours, and then they come back and hang out at the pools.
Oh, that's actually, I forgot to ask us to give a definition of what red tide is. We just kind of went right into it. So what is it, and why do people not want to come to the beach when we have it?
So trying to think of the proper definition.
It's an algae bloom? Is
I
that
think it's an algae, yeah.
algae bloom, I believe.
Yeah, it's an algae bloom that's exacerbated from the runoff from the rivers and the creeks. So when there's heavy rains, the fertilizer washes out into the streams that go out into the Gulf that basically feed that algae bloom. And basically the algae bloom is a respiratory and eye irritant. So it burns your eyes and makes it harder to breathe, and it kills the fish. So you not only have the irritation, to one's person, but you also have the dead fish on the beach, which is obviously not ideal from both a smell perspective and from a visual perspective.
Right. So, okay. So it's an algae bloom. It can make you cough and stuff, kind of give you cold related symptoms. And then it can make the beach really stinky because of the dead fish, because it kills the fish. So guys, that's why people might not want to come to the beach when there is red tide. So is there a threshold for this website, visitbeaches.com, that if it says over a certain number, that is kind of your threshold for, okay, like this person's being unreasonable, this is not a big deal, we're not going to cancel for this, or like, yeah, this kind of sucks right now, here's your money back?
I guess it kind of also goes back, there's different colors, like green if it's good, red yellow or orange if it's kind of like, there's some red tide out there, and then it goes to red when it's, really bad. But again, I kind of go back to, is it just one beach that's experiencing that, bad red tide and the other ones are pretty reasonable? Or is it, all the beaches, in the area that are experiencing bad red tide? Most of the time, it's very rarely every beach, I guess I would say. So, they may have to drive an extra mile or two, one direction or the other, but they can usually get to, a very nice beach that may only have a minimal impact from the red tide. Ultimately it's the guest decision. We try to educate them and, explain to them the circumstances and that, we're not directly on the beach. So, you could still enjoy the home, and the pool area. But you might not necessarily be able to go to the specific beach that you wanted to, but there may be others in the area comparable.
Okay, well, that's smart then, that you can say, well, you can come hang out at the pool. This one beach that's your favorite might be a problem, but these other ones are fine. I didn't think about the fact that it might be different at different local beaches. All right, next, do you ever get people who get there and they check in and then it's rainy or not sunny, or the ideal scenario for a beach vacation, and they get there on a rainy week and then they want some kind of compensation or discount for that?
We've had those questions asked, and I can't control the weather, so I personally don't offer discounts for things like that.
I feel like here, you look at the weather, the Weather Channel or on your phone, on your app, and then you see like rain and people start to freak out. But here in Florida, like it's typical where it will rain for an hour and then it clears up and it's hot and sunny and great. And you're still able to go out and enjoy the pool and the beaches. So I think people that aren't super familiar with Florida will question the weather when they see that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, when it rains, it doesn't rain all day usually. It usually only rains for a couple hours, and sometimes it rains and the sunshine is out. So there's
so I think that's a pretty good like universal answer, and that's kind of what I was expecting you guys to say, is like, we can't control the weather when it comes to, is it sunny outside, is it rainy outside? That's not, you paid to book this house for a certain amount of days, and that's what we gave you. So let's move on to the thing that I'm sure everyone is waiting for us to bring up as they're listening to this, and that is hurricanes. So hurricane season happens every year, and I think it starts June 1st or July 1st. Does it technically start?
I think
it's sometime like way early.
Yeah,
June 1st, but we don't typically start seeing anything crazy. And by crazy, I mean, like, nobody looks at mikesweatherpage.com or spaghettymodels.com until August is when we start seeing some named storms actually maybe possibly coming to one of our coasts. So how do you handle, let's say there's a tropical storm not yet named out there maybe it's in the Gulf, maybe it's not. And future guests start asking questions. They're coming next week. It's supposed to hit next week, maybe not. What's kind of your process for working through that with them?
The first thing I normally do is just try to calm them down,
Yeah.
People who aren't familiar with hurricanes, and just see that, oh my goodness, there's a hurricane coming. I just try to explain to them that, that hurricane is probably a long ways away right now. It could go a whole bunch of different directions. If you look at some of the spaghetti models, it may go in 3 different circles before it even, hits landfall. Right now, say it's a week out, it's too early to tell. As it gets closer to when, the storm is scheduled to make landfall, and, as the likelihood of it coming towards us or near us, increases, then we kind of cross that bridge or continue that conversation at that point.
And do you ever see people because a lot of people don't realize just how much coastline we have in Florida. So, we're recording this a few weeks after Idalia, and that hit kind of the Big Bend area of Florida. And so many people, and like my family members and stuff, were reaching out to us way over here in the Panhandle, almost to the Alabama line, saying, "Are you guys evacuating? Are you guys okay?" And we're like, "It's not even cloudy here. It's sunny out." So I think people don't realize that just because it hits one part of Florida, it doesn't necessarily affect all of Florida. So how do you work through that with them? So say maybe something's headed towards up here in the Panhandle, but you guys aren't going to get anything. How do we work through that?
It's communication and education. Sometimes a message over the Airbnb app or VRBO app isn't the best way to do it. Sometimes you got to pick up the phone and kind of talk through it with them and help them understand, exactly what you just said. Just because there's a hurricane coming in the vicinity of Florida doesn't mean, our specific area is going to be impacted at all.
I think most people just don't know, especially if they're not from here. They just think hurricane, and then it's on the news and it's on all social media. Like even, my family's in Michigan, and so they'll start texting me and calling. I'm like, can you just please stop? Like, it's not that bad. Like, it's really not. Like, yes, it's West Coast, but like you were saying, not close to us. We're in the pool. It's not. And yes. So I think it is just educating and talking to people and telling them, like, no, we're a few days out. Worst case scenario at this point, you could see, an afternoon of rain, but nothing heavier than a typical, rainstorm. So I think it's the education part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And just working through that with them. But what if we get to the point of like, all right, y'all, crap, looks like it's coming this way, and it's named and it's on its way. You guys giving refunds for that?
If it's coming right at us, then yes. I mean, if there's a real threat, then of course, if again, like Christina said, if it's bright and sunny out and we're in the pool, and it's probably not going to have any impact on us, but they're just paranoid, most likely not. But we try to put ourselves in the traveler's shoes and be reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's something like that and it's coming, like you gotta give people their money back, because you can't expect them to come. We see people here, the phrase that I use. So we have this little area called Crab Island. That's not actually an island. It's just a really shallow part of the bay that's like really, really clear. And a lot of people go out there and park their boats. And by a lot of people, I mean thousands. And I won't go there, but people say it's fun. It used to be fun back in the day before it was thousands of people. And people will go out there when it is just nasty and it's raining and the Gulf looks like crap. And you say, like, why would you do that? Why would you go out there on a jet ski and sit there in the gross bay water when it's not even nice out? And their answer is always, well, I paid too much to be here not to. And I feel like if you don't allow someone that refund, then they might still come and they might get in a bad position, because that's, it can be expensive to go on vacation, and people will do things that they wouldn't normally do that are not a good idea because they paid too much not to enjoy that thing. So I think we gotta, if the hurricane's come in this direction, we gotta just give them the refund. Now, moving towards the backside of the hurricane. So the hurricane's gone. What about, maybe it came through a few days ago and it's fine now, or maybe it's not fine. Maybe there's a little damage. What about your bookings after that? I know, of course, the answer is it depends, but how do we work through that with potential guests if there's really not much damage, or really maybe not any damage in your general area, but maybe, a couple neighborhoods the other direction?
Like you said, it's kind of a case by case basis, but, for example, we had Hurricane Idalia come through last Wednesday. I had 5 different reservations checking in Friday. Prior to Wednesday, everyone was questioning how the hurricane was going to impact their reservation. I explained to them, just like we talked about, let's wait and see. It doesn't look like it's coming this way. We should be fine. As it was passing, or as soon as it passed, people reached out is the property still standing? And, all those questions yep, everything's fine. We had to pick up a little bit of debris in the yard, but the property will be 100%, for your arrival on Friday.
Gotcha. All right. So I think that's it. Anything else that we deal with a lot when it comes to hurricanes and communication with guests about that, or anything that we do if we have a property that we own in this market, we've got the guests situated, but it looks like a hurricane's coming this way. Do we do anything to prep that? Or, do we throw the pool furniture in the pool and board it up, or how does that typically work?
We'll generally go around the properties and pick up anything that's loose, anything that can be, thrown around with heavy winds. If you got a place to store the pool furniture, great. If you got to throw it in the pool, that's always an option. Keeps it from blowing around. But normally we'll prep the patios and the outdoor areas, for a storm similar to we had, with Idalia. If it's something that looks like it's going to be a direct impact, which knock on wood, we haven't had in recorded history down here, then obviously we would take other precautions where, you're talking boarded windows and standard, procedures for stuff like that.
And kind of going back to that cancellation too. I mean, not only does that guest want to cancel, as owners, we don't really want anybody in our houses either. We want prep to do. It's much easier for us to do the prep and make sure that our houses are safe and that everyone's safe if no one's in them. So, in addition to maybe cancellation, we will ask, do you want to reschedule? Try to keep the revenue that way. If their trans are, if they're flexible, if they're driving here, then we also will try to reschedule.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point, Christina. We don't want guests there if there's problems with the property. If we need to prep the property for the storm, we really don't want them there. If there's damage from the storm, we don't want them there. So, our response and our approach to guests is kind of based on that. If everything's okay, then, we want guests to be there. If there's going to be problems, we don't want them there either. We don't want to potentially put them in harm's way. We don't want them to be in the way when we're trying to prep. And, if the property is not as advertised, basically if things are broken or if there's problems and, we're not able to provide, what we advertised, we don't want them there either.
Yeah.
So
you don't want to just invite them into a bad review.
Sure.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, I think that's enough on hurricanes. Let's see. What else is something that you just deal with fairly often or every now and then that you think our listeners need to be aware of about this market?
Stina, any thoughts?
I was just thinking pool heat, but John can probably talk a little bit more about this. Sometimes the pool is too hot or it's too heated, and John's kind of, had some ideas on things to mitigate that and make sure that it's not too hot, or we don't just throw ice in the pool. People laugh, can't you just put ice in that? Can't you cool it down somehow? And so, John, I think you can probably speak a little bit more to that and, running the pool pump at a different time or.
Yeah. Pool heat is definitely something that is, I don't want to say a challenge, but everybody has different expectations on what a heated pool means. It seems like some people want it heated like a hot tub, others, sometimes they think it's too hot. So, we try to have automation systems to where we could adjust that temperature and adjust the pool pump remotely. To Christina's point, sometimes in the summertime, most of the summertime, we turn the pool heater off. And sometimes the guests think it's too warm. The pool will actually get up to 92, 93 degrees. So to mitigate that, instead of having chillers, because, they have a pool heater / chiller to where it can cool the pool too. One thing we do is we run the pool pump at night. And what that does is it breaks the water tension when it's cooler out and allows the heat to escape the water and therefore cool the pool a couple degrees more than it would otherwise. Alternatively, in the wintertime, when we try to keep the pool warmer, we start the pool pump with the heater, earlier in the morning than we normally would. So we started at 6 or 7 in the morning so it could start heating the pool and be a reasonable temperature for the guests to enjoy it, 10, 12 o'clock. So there's different approaches depending on what that season is and what that outdoor temperature is on how to keep the pool, at an optimal temperature.
And can you do all that remotely on your phone?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's something.
Yeah, if you have the automation system, you can. Otherwise, it's a lot more of a pain in the butt to have to send somebody down there to do it manually.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And especially for remote owners, it's really nice to just be able to hit a button and control all that stuff. So definitely a good thing to mention. What else? We're coming towards the end of time. Anything else that you guys run into? I think the pool heater is a good one. I don't think I have any other questions unless you think there's just something that folks need to hear about that we haven't touched on.
I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head.
Either.
All right, cool. Well, guys, if you are ready to buy with John and Christina in that market, you can email us at agents@theshorttermshop.com and we will get you connected. Or if you just want to learn more about short-term rental investing in general, there's a few different things you can do. You can join our Facebook group. It's called Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth, same as my book. Or you can join every Thursday. We have a call, a free Q&A, live Q&A, and you can join that at strquestions.com to sign up. Thanks, guys.